Welcome to the Guided Podcast, where we support you to find the courage to listen and act. I'm Amanda Goolsby, and with me is
Katz.
Let's get started. In this episode, we are furthering the conversation from last week, where we really dove into the courage to listen, the courage to allow what is needing to be released, to let go, to surrender.
We're going to talk about how to know when it's time to shift out of the surrender and the letting go and act. It could be easy to get stuck in the letting go and be apathetic or become addicted. I think in so many ways, actually, the biggest risk today is that our mind thinks it's comfortable. It becomes like safe to not act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you could get stuck there. And that sucks.
And so the opportunity that we get to really lean into for this conversation today and what this episode is really about is twofold. It's one, knowing then when to act when you come out of a letting go process. And the other part of that is the knowing when to stay. Like, when do you need to just keep expanding into the energy that's there and not giving up, not backing down, not letting go in the early or middle stages of then once you begin to take the action, once you begin to move forward, because, knowing when to act once you receive guidance and you're like, okay, it's like, that's only the first step.
You're going to get tested. As soon as you start acting, you're going to get tested, and how you handle the test will actually determine everything that comes after that. And by the way, it will also tell you whether your action is in alignment. So I think we for sure want to break that down. Before we do that, though, I think I do have a bit of a confession, which is that I got stuck in the letting go for a really long time.
Like how long?
Just the perfect amount of time. I mean, it was all right on time. It was all in perfect time. And I know that. And if I'm really hard on myself, I can say that I came out of my bankruptcy in 2013.
Okay.
And I'm only now really feeling the full impact of my alignment. And we're in 2023. So,
but you weren't like not moving during that time. It wasn't that you weren't taking action during that time.
2014 and 15 were my hardest years of my life. I thought bankruptcy was rock bottom. It was not rock bottom at all. What was rock bottom was coming out of the bankruptcy and now needing to integrate the lessons from the bankruptcy and not really knowing how to do that, not having support to do that, and moving into some of the deepest fear patterns of my life and pretty much right back into addiction, into pretty significant addiction that was both addiction to work, which is acceptable, societally acceptable addiction to marijuana, which is also pretty societally acceptable addiction, and addiction to relationships. And those were really my three big addictions: relational addiction, marijuana, and work. And I moved right out of the bankruptcy into those addictions and had to really face those until 2015 came. And I had no choice at that point but to grow up. I did go through a death process then. There was the death process that led to my current name, Katz, coming through, although it would be another 4 years before I could even take the name Katz. And in that 4 years, from 2015 to really 2018, 2019, I was acting for sure. And I was acting with courage, for sure, without question. And I was learning such important lessons along the way. And maybe, you're just at the beginning of your of your act. So maybe the opportunity here is actually to harvest that, because that feels like it took me a really long time to learn those lessons that I needed to learn from 15 to really 18, 19, going into 20, going into then, COVID times, which was its whole own other experience. But I couldn't even step into my name, Katz, for all of those years. And yeah, I was acting, for sure. And I was in a lot of despair in those years. It was really hard, really, really, really hard work. It did not feel graceful or easeful most of the time. And I wonder just what could I have done to move through those years with more ease and with more grace, because it was just hard. I look back, it was just hard.
So in you sharing that, thank you. Thanks for your honesty and your vulnerability and just your willingness to share what came up for you. I noticed that as you were sharing that, that I was like, well, I don't feel like I have these like addictions to at least the things that you said, right? Like the work addiction, I have had that. There has for sure been times in my life where maybe it wasn't as much of addiction as it was a requirement, and that, I feel really, really, really proud of myself to be able to say that I don't have any substance abuse problems. And it's been a real freaking journey with that, meaning that there's been a lot of opportunities in my life where, in selling drugs when I was 21 years old, that I could have easily gotten caught into the world of addiction. And the relationship piece, I've spent so much of my life being single / doing work to heal my previous trauma and heal my attachment wounding, and doing the work so that I can be in a place that feels really liberated when it comes to only choosing relationships, friendships, partnerships, romantic relationships that are for the highest good of everyone involved. And so I'm curious, I'm in this process right now of me being able to see okay, well, what are the patterns? What are the things that could come up that could potentially, in my own version, make the next iteration of my expansion and my experience have those, the crunchiness that you got to experience that took potentially many years for you to experience. And I also want to say, don't, they say an overnight success in 10 years. Someone looks like an overnight success, and that overnight success took 10 years. And if we're really looking at it, it's been, you're hitting that 10-year mark. And it's not that you didn't create really amazing things in the last decade, but what I'm hearing you say is it's just now that you really feel like you're hitting your stride, and you're doing it from a place that is in alignment, not leaning into addiction in all different forms while you're trying to go through whatever the expansion is that you were going through for all of those years.
Yeah. This is actually really good for me to be looking at the places over the past 10 years where that addiction did get me, and where I succumbed. I would really look at it that way, where I really succumbed or got stuck in the addictive patterns because I couldn't see them. And that's really what I think it's about. As Adam Roa says, awareness equals choice. And I feel curious for you with not getting stuck in relational addiction or work addiction or substance addiction, if that is because of awareness that you were able to not get stuck, or is it just because you're really proactive with your trauma healing, which probably 10 years ago, when I really think about it, 10 years ago. We didn't live in a trauma-informed culture 10 years ago. That's really actually pretty new on the scene. I was doing trauma healing work on myself and with various therapists and healers. So I worked with Jason Gaddis, who is the author of a book we could post here. Anyway, I can't remember the name of his book, but we'll have to post it in the show notes. He's a big relationship coach and relationship therapist, and trains other relationship therapists. And I worked with him back in my days at the farm to learn to feel for the very first time. And I remember our sessions, and he's taking me into processes where I'm actually learning to feel my body, but we didn't call it trauma healing. And I remember crying for the first time in my life during those times, and feeling so terrified that I was going to get stuck. Like, if I let myself cry and I really let myself go there all the way into the crying, I will get stuck there. And I can't let myself do that, because then I won't be able to support my kids. That was some of the thoughts back then. And it's really only in the past couple of years, since Luminous and working with another therapist, Deborah Wilder, where she actually held so much space for me to meet the internal parts of myself that had never yet been met, that I was able to really, I think, complete parts of this trauma healing that began 10 years ago. And so I think what I realize is that over this 10-year period, I've been doing this work of healing my trauma, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. So I didn't have the awareness of how much trauma was making my choices. And without that awareness, I was just operating from the trauma.
Yeah.
And then being a mom, and as I'm parenting my teenagers, everything that they experienced as teenagers would bring me right back to the parts of myself that I experienced as a teenager and never got met. And I do believe that that is one of the things that we do throughout our lives, and it's part of the spiral path, is that we're spiraling on this path and we're going around these turns of the wheel again and again, and getting to experience everything that we've experienced before, but now from a different consciousness, so that we can bring this next level of consciousness and have another chance to try and do it again and meet it differently, because we heal by feeling. And so as a mom, each of the things that my children were experiencing, I could either make it about them, or I could have the opportunity to realize, oh, here's my chance. This is back so that I can heal it in my body, not pointing the finger at them. Oh, there's something wrong with you because you're doing, drugs and sex and rock and roll in high school. I did that too. But actually, so I can meet it with you in a different way than my parents met it with me, and I can heal it. And then I really got a chance to do that with my teenagers. And that was their years that I was doing that. And that was part of the healing process. And yeah, I guess it just needed to take as long as it took, because I didn't actually know that that's what was happening. And so with awareness, you get to see what's arising, that it is trauma, and meet it with so much more intentionality and clarity. And even your medicine journeys, I started doing medicine work in 2009. There wasn't integration support. I had no idea a lot of the times what was actually happening, what I was doing, what I was healing. Now I can look back and be like, oh, okay, that's what was going on. But I didn't really know as it was happening.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that in hearing just where this start of this episode for us is really about the beginning process of the transition from what was the letting go to in the courage to act, and the sticking with it, and the staying with it. It's like in the path of transformation. And as we begin to transform our lives in different ways, whether that's a new iteration of ourselves, whether that's a new way of being in the world, whatever the old identity was that we let go and that we're now stepping into something new. It's like you said, life will bring up these opportunities to test you and to really say, like, how committed are you to this new vision, to this new creation, to this new piece that is now clear that you're bringing through? And the healing and the transformation work and the healing of trauma, this all is work that can be done at any point in someone's journey. And the sooner the better, right? The sooner that we face the shadows and know what our unconscious patterns are, the better, for the sake of us, for the sake of the people we're connected to, for the sake of everyone around us, and more importantly, for the sake of who we are becoming in the world. Because the creation of what you're bringing through, Allie, like what you actually are here to shift in the culture, what you're here to shift in the global financial system, like what your life is here to be a message of and a transformation of, it was exactly on time, is exactly as it needed to be, and an opportunity for myself and for anyone that's listening to say is like, how quickly, how easily, how effortlessly, how gracefully can we like actually take proactive action? Like sometimes the action isn't always, I need to like birth this thing. Sometimes the action is like, you know what? I now have clarity of what I'm going to take steps forward on. And I also see what's potentially has the capacity to hold me back. Like if right now, I know that one of my quote unquote addictions that started when I was in the hospital in 2010 is an addiction to sleep. Because in 2010, when my accident happened, I spent 2 months in the hospital. And of those 2 months, I was on bed rest for 4 weeks, and I was on high doses of opioids during that time. But I realized that the only time I don't feel pain is when I sleep. And so that became my coping mechanism when I don't want to feel. If I don't want to feel, I can like force myself to sleep. And I can force myself to sleep copious amounts of sleep. And really,
I'm jealous. That sounds really nice. I don't know how to do that.
and, you know, I get to be aware, and I know that that's one of my things. And I get to make sure that like that doesn't become a pattern or a habit to like fall into. And, you know, a big part of my journey has been leaning into the action of healing and doing the trauma work and looking at my unconscious patterns and saying like, how do I keep these in awareness so that they don't become the places to which I run when things get hard?
Well, and I think it's interesting about both of our addictions, actually, that each of our addictions, other than the marijuana one, which I could cut marijuana out of my life completely and have at various times. And even now, like, you know, I'll smoke pot on occasion now. I feel in very, very, very right relationship with marijuana in my life. Although I will say that before we went to Costa Rica, I was taking CBD every single day, in the morning with caffeine and in the night, this like heavy dosage. And I was starting to feel afraid, like, oh no, this feels like addiction. This feels like I'm attached to this thing. As soon as we got to Costa Rica, I took it once and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right to take anymore. And I didn't take it again after that, which was so good. It just had me realize, like my environment is very important to me. Very, very, very important to my body. Anyway, our other addictions, work, sleep, relationships, these are all things that you can't actually go cold turkey with. You know, if either one of us had like an alcohol addiction, you can go cold turkey with alcohol. You can just stop. You know, I have a on again, off again addiction relationship with nicotine. That one I could just stop. But work,
with enough like willpower, decision,
choice. I could, you know, I either stop and it's out or it's in. But with work and relationships and sleep, those are ones that you do need to do them. Same with food.
Yeah.
Right. I haven't ever had a food addiction. Have you had food addiction issues?
I would say I've had food, like relationship with food, disordered eating patterns.
I've probably also had disordered eating. I think that's like can't figure out what am I supposed to eat? I can't figure it out. I think yours has been a little bit different. We can do a whole episode on our relationship with food. But anyway, my point being here that these are things that I think many of us have addictions, have disordered relationships with work, relationship, food, sleep, and money. That's a big one. And our opportunity as we move into the courage to act is to come into right relationship with each one of these things, and with substances too. To come into right relationship with each of these things, because we can't not do them. We need relationships. We need sleep. We need food. Maybe one day we'll be breatharians, but right now we need food. And we need work as well. We need work as well, not just because we need work for money. There's actually going to come a day and time when we don't. So I want to just let you all know that that's something I see coming with the central bank digital currency and UBI and AI and all of this. Probably what's coming is a time when you don't need, quote unquote, you don't need to work. You can very easily choose to rely on the system to support you so you don't have to work. But you do need to work. Your soul needs you to work. Your soul needs you to contribute to the world in right relationship. And so when I look at those years, what they really were they were years of me beginning to understand what is right relationship with work. What is right relationship with relationships? What is right relationship with money? What is right relationship with my children? What is right relationship with substances like marijuana and nicotine? What is right relationship? I'm just, I think, figuring out in some ways the right relationship with food. Just had a whole genetic testing reporting session yesterday to really understand what's right relationship with food for my own system, because awareness is choice. And it took me a really long time. I'm putting it in the frame of a really long time over those 10 years, over the past 10 years, to get really clear about right relationships, such that today the showing up piece is full of grace and ease, because I did that. And I think more than anything, what I desire, and part of why I'm even doing this podcast with you, is to shortcut. You don't need to take 10 years.
Good.
Yeah. Right. Because if you don't take 10 years, then 3 years from now, if we look out at what your life looks like, and you have children and you are in really big flow with your work, your life gets to be amazing, as opposed to like downward spiral.
Totally. And so in these moments where there's the knowing, where there's, the hearing of the guidance, and for someone who's listening, that's like, okay, like either I did the whole surrender, letting go, or I'm in that process. I've trusted, I'm in the surrendering. I'm going to do my best to not be in resistance to what is. But like, once we start moving into that direction of the action, of the actualization, of the making a decision, of the setting a date for something, of the putting a creation out into the world, like, in your experience, what were some of the turning points of knowing either when to stay with something and to like really not just like let it die, and also how to stay in right relationship as you begin to take action?
Yeah. So the first thing that I will say is to make an inventory of the places where you know that you are addicted to something, because you have healing work to do that you might not yet know how to do. I would say taking an inventory is really critically important, because if you are operating from the addiction, life is just inviting you to do the work on that. And it might be, by the way, that doing the work on that is doing your own work on yourself. So for me, a big part of that was healing my relationship with money. Now, my work in the world is to support people to come into right relationship with money. How could I possibly do work around supporting people to come into right relationship with money if I haven't done the healing work of coming into right relationship with money and healing my own money dysmorphia? So that took a number of years. And so every time that I would start to kind of get out ahead of myself with it, I would oftentimes get the messages and the reminders, do my own work, give myself the medicine I want to give the world. And so I think, Amanda, the first thing that I would do is ask yourself the question, is there any place that you're wanting to put something out into the world that you actually haven't fully done that work on yourself first?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a great time actually to talk about what you are bringing into the world, because it is coming from the place of having done the work on yourself first. Over this past period of time, I watched it happen. And so maybe let's just use a very practical example here with this work that you're bringing forward, that you've gotten clear is yours to do, which, by the way, over the period of time when you've been in this question of what you're going to do, I would not have known that this was the thing that you were going to say is yours to do. And once you said it, it was like, oh yeah, oh my God, that makes total sense. I wouldn't have been able to see that from the outside. It clearly came from your own internal process. And so let's talk about it. Let's just look very practically at what it is.
So we were together in Costa Rica about a month ago, and we were at a women's leadership retreat. And in that leadership retreat, one of the days was a medicine ceremony. And in that medicine ceremony, we got to the end of the day and it was really beautiful. It was a daytime ceremony, sitting with the medicine of San Pedro. And throughout the course of the day, we did, many different micro ceremonies within this greater ceremony container. And as we were in the integration circle, I had this visceral experience throughout the day, which was this feeling of, wow, we're doing some of these beautiful rites of passage. And I think for women, like rites of passage for women. And one of the things that was coming to mind was I was thinking about first the next generation. So I was thinking like, okay, doing these types of rites of passages for our daughters, for the women who are coming next after us, because we have this awareness, has the capacity to transform their experience in the future generations should we integrate and implement better rites of passages. And then in that same fold, I started going back as I was having that same thought. I started going back the other way. It was like I was seeing the future and I was seeing the past all in one moment. And I saw these images of my mom and thinking about my mom and being like, wow, there was no way that she had a rites of passage that taught her how to come into right relationship with her sensual body and her sexuality and the gift that her sexuality is to bring life and to birth anything into existence. And then I saw my grandma, and it was like this ripple effect in both directions that I saw. And in that, I shared during our integration, I said, wow, I just really see the power of doing medicine with moms and daughters. And immediately when I heard that, then I heard, this is yours to do. And to go a little bit back in the story so that the listeners can have a better understanding.
Let me pause there before you do, because had you not done this work with your mom, and I think that's what you're going to go back to, is talking about how you've done it with your mom. Had you not done that with your mom, you could have gotten the same message, but not been ready to bring it through, because you would have not done it yet with your mom. And honestly, if you were bringing this through and hadn't already done it with your mom, I wouldn't trust you personally, because the idea of doing this with my mom and even my daughter and I are very close. We have done some medicine work together, although it was really challenging for me. The idea of doing this with my mom is super terrifying. Every time you mention it, I'm like, oh my God, am I supposed to do this? Oh God. Oh God. The fact that you did it with your mom is what really supports me to trust you and know this is yours to do. If you had gotten that message and had not already done it with your mom, then my invitation to you would be,
go do it.
Go do it with your mom.
Yeah. And that's a part of the path of leadership. And something that you said earlier is there anything that you want to birth that you don't yet embody? Well, you didn't use that word, but that's the word that I resonate with. And one of the things that I know to be true that feels really true in some of the frameworks of embodied feminine leadership and sacred feminine leadership is that after the season of receptivity and the season of listening is the season of embodiment. Through a body of work that one of my mentors, Nani Leah Diamond, a network chiropractor, has brought through. It's like you must receive and then move into the season of embodiment before it gets to fully be expressed out into the world. And so going back to the story about my mom, my mom and I have had a challenging relationship in many ways for my whole life. The time where the biggest rupture happened, I would say, was when I was 15 years old. And my stepdad kicked me out of my house, our house. It was my mom, my stepdad, me, and my little brother. And my stepdad told me to get out and not to come back. And my mom didn't do anything. She just let it happen because she didn't have, there's many reasons, but she didn't have the courage and the backbone and the spine to say, no, this is not happening. No, this is not happening. No, we got to work through this. We need to have better communication. We've got to, no. And so it's taken many years. That was from 15 to really about 31 that I had been doing many years of healing on my own. I had done many, I could go through episodes and episodes around all the healing work that each of us has done. But specifically with my mom, there was a lot of forgiveness work that had to be done. And there was a lot of me being able to begin to see that in my forgiving and in my creating more space in my own system for compassion, that I was able to see, wow, my mom was always doing the best she could with where she was at. And 2 years ago, I flew her to Tulum. We spent a week together. We experienced some we did a yoga class together and we did a breathwork class together. And so I started bringing her into my world of healing because I've watched her my whole life struggle with bipolar, quote unquote, being bipolar and having depression and mostly being depressed and being on every type of antidepressant medication that exists over the last 30 years. And then over the last 4 or 5 years and myself being on the medicine path and really seeing, there is an opportunity that I feel for my mom to come and to experience this. And when the medicine, really came to me and I was like, someone's supposed to be here with me, but who is it? And I was listening and it was your mom, your mom, your mom, your mom, your mom. And I was like, okay. And I remember this was last summer, my mom's never done a psychedelic in her life.
Totally. And she's a little old lady kind of woman.
Yes. She's 65 years old, Christian woman who literally reads her Bible every single day and has been mostly depressed her whole life.
And didn't have the courage to stand up to her husband, 15, 16 years ago, 17, 18 years ago and say, no, you're not kicking my daughter out. You could kind of get a picture of Amanda's mom, so many women of her age.
Yeah, the baby boomer generation, women who never had access to any of this. It was not in the culture. It was not a part of Instagram. They didn't just log in and see 1,700 breathwork options for the day that they could download these apps and have these tools at their fingertips. And so in receiving that last summer in July, when I received that information, I mean, this is kind of how I'm a manifesting generator. I just go to the end and then I figure it out. I go back and then figure out the steps. So I just called the place and I booked my mom a ticket. I didn't tell her. I didn't invite her. I didn't say, do you want to come yet? I just was I'm going to take action because I am so clear that she needs to be there. I'm going to call and I'm going to pay $5,000 for her to be there. And then I'm going to figure out how this works. And then I remember calling her and inviting her and saying, I got a trip to Costa Rica. And she's like, yay, that's amazing. I'm like, it's this date, just like block off your calendar. And then I'm like, okay, bye. Talk to you later.
You still didn't tell her what was happening.
Because I just wanted to get the yes to Costa Rica.
Right.
One step at a time, people.
One yes at a time.
So I get the yes. And then I'm like, you know what? I called her back, and it was a few calls before I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, you know how I've talked to you about the studies that have been coming out around microdosing and how microdosing mushrooms has proven to support people that are dealing with mental health things. I said, well, there's another medicine called ayahuasca that also has the capacity to create massive transformation. And it's going to be a more intense journey. I said, are you down for a more intense journey that has the capacity to change your entire life?
What did she say?
She's like, well, okay.
Wow. I mean, that really speaks to the trust that you have built up with her over these past years. And this is a big thing that I have been speaking about. Do your parents trust you and not trust you? Most people's parents don't trust them. And your mom really trusted you, had to trust you to such a degree to be able to say yes to that. And I will say that the day that I truly felt my mother's trust for the first time was the day that my life permanently changed. If I look at all of the years of struggle and strain and worry and stress and guilt and shame and fear and all of the things that were driving me and that were like stuck in my nervous system, they most shifted on the day I realized, oh, wow, my mom really trusts me. Because the amount of work that I needed to do in my own self, to heal in my own self, to be able to get to that place where my mom trusted me and I felt her trust, was the mountain, not just the tip of the iceberg, but the full mountain of work and the recognition. And that's where it really comes home to roost. And I will tell you, I'll cut right to the chase and I'll give you all the secret. And I'm going to check in with you, Amanda, to see if this was true for you. What immediately preceded my feeling of that, we're going to do a whole episode breaking this down, but what immediately preceded my feeling of that was me being able to come into a full acceptance of my mother. I had to get to a place where I fully and totally stopped judging her and didn't just forgive her, but accepted her. And when I did that, and I got to feel her trust back on me, it was a transformational moment in my own life. And so I'm curious if that maps with your own experience.
Yeah. I think that over the years of doing my journey, my healing work on myself, that there definitely came a place, I can't pinpoint it exactly, but there came a point in my journey where I basically was like, if my mom is going to be just depressed for the rest of her life and for my life, can I just be in full acceptance that this is the reality that she's going to live in? And can I just love her exactly where she's at? And, one of the statements that I say that I believe is so important is nothing transforms in a field of judgment. So as long as we're judging or making wrong or bad anything in our own lives or in the lives of the people that we love or that are close to us, transformation is not going to happen in judgment. And so in the acceptance of our moms, there's a felt sense then in the way that our energetic field interacts with theirs, of there's a level of acceptance. And in acceptance, we are able to move from guilt and shame and fear and anger into acceptance, which allows us to reach more love. It allows us to access more love when there is more acceptance. And so, part of what is being asked to birth through me right now is to bring a mother-daughter ayahuasca retreat into the world. And last summer, I took my mom to one of the largest medicine centers in Costa Rica called Rhythmia. And in taking her there, we didn't just stay for a week. At the end of the first week, my mom says to me, mind you, as I've watched my mom, I've sat in ceremony with my mom. Like one moment that my mom shared is we were in integration and I had asked her, because I know her and because I know this type of work. I've been doing this work. And so I said to her, I said, Mom, when we go into ceremony tonight, one question that I want you to potentially ask to see if you get any answers of is, when was the earliest memory in my life that I learned that in order to be loved, I had to do something? And it was so profoundly impactful. I didn't know this story. I had never heard, but she shared this moment when she was a teenager where her parents went off to this racetrack and then she realized that they left the tickets at home and she called the racetrack. She was like 13 and told them that the tickets were there. And when her dad came home, like when they got there, then they were able to get straight in because the people already knew that they were coming and it was all cleared out. So when her dad came home, she received so much praise for doing something that she equated that when I do things for other people, that's how I receive love. And her entire life has been being a martyr. And that martyr energy of giving everything at the sake of her own self for everyone else, because that's how she learned to receive love, that got liberated. And I got to hear her share that story in an integration circle. And when things like that occur in this space, it gave me so much compassion for how my mom has operated in her life, that there's so much healing there. Because as I have so much more compassion, then there's more space for connection. There's less judgment. There's more love. There's less guilt and shame. There's more just like, you know what? I can now see that the choices that you've made, all the times where I've been pissed because you had to do to receive love and you couldn't stand up to someone in opposition to them because then love would be taken away from you. And like that, this is the place, the conditioning from which you're operating. And so much more compassion. And so part of what
and so much greater chance that you will not pass it on because that lives in you.
Totally.
Of course.
Totally.
And so now you can see it and not pass it on.
And so, this creation, this being mine to do, I believe that this is one of the things. It's not like I'm, yes, this one thing though that I am here to create and to birth into the world and to bring forward is the next thing that allows for some more of this lineage and legacy healing to one, be healing back in my generations of my mom and my grandmother and my great grandmother and forward and back 7 generations of healing that this work is, but also bringing more moms and daughters together to do this so that there is more love and connection and more awareness and more, transformation that gets to occur as more women lean into saying, you know what, like I'm going to have the courage to ask my mom to do this with me or my daughter to do this with me.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. And as we're coming to the end of today's episode, I think where we want to pick up is just continuing on this curiosity of how do you know what is yours to do? How do you know when it is yours to do it? And how do you know that you're ready, even as the tests come? And so I think that's what we get to talk about in our next episode, using this example of this coming through so clearly, knowing that you have already done this work with your mom. And then what are the next steps here so that you can continue to know that you are showing up? And I just saw you post something on your Instagram around like, this is the year of consistency. And so we get to talk about that. How that is part of showing up is being consistent, showing up for it, what to do when you get tested, as you will along the way. And just look at some of the other signposts of how to know when it is time to act.
Thank you for diving in today. And, thank you to each and every one of you for just listening to the story of as this process, I feel like so much of it has been around this actual in real time journey that I've been in and utilizing my life and what's happening as an example for anyone who's listening to be able to move forward in their own path. And even if moving forward means slowing down, even if moving forward means taking a break, even if it means dissolving, going through the death portal. So in this episode of having the courage to act and to stick with it and to lean into the knowing, we'll continue to unpack parts of these stories that we've shared and really how they relate to your own life and how you can take action from there. So, my encouragement to each and every one of you, my invitation to each and every one of you is to just track, where are you at in this process? Are you more in that stage of you have received clear guidance and you're kind of where I am, where it's like, yeah, I've got to move forward and take action on this? Or are you in the last episode's process of, I need to slow down. I need to listen. I need to be willing to allow the death and the dying to happen so that I can move forward in my life.
If you enjoy the Guided podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to come back next week. Until then, this is Katz and
Amanda Goolsby.
And remember, life knows.